Welcome back to the Friday show, presented this week by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association Stallion Season Auction. It is underway now. It started earlier this week. It goes through Monday. They've got, I believe, 75 stallion seasons on auction, not just from Pennsylvania, but from around the Mid-Atlantic, as well as Florida, Kentucky. And Joe, I'm here with Joe Nevills, our bloodstock editor. And Joe, there's some really good stallions represented in this auction.
Absolutely. There's some proven bloodlines here. If you're looking to breed in Kentucky, seasons from stallions like Candy Ride, Dialed In, Honor Code. If you're looking for some young blood, a Stern, Enticed, Kentucky Derby winner Country House. But if you want to keep it in your home state, breed in Pennsylvania. Got plenty of options there too. Smarty Jones has seasons in here. Uptown Charlie Brown, Warriors Reward, and newcomer Wicked Strong. So whatever you're looking for, they got it.
And there's good reason to breed in Pennsylvania. There's not just with Pennsylvania stallions, but you can also get incentive awards by foaling in Pennsylvania after breeding to an out-of-state stallion.
Yeah, Pennsylvania's got a fantastic breeding program supporting its breeders. If you have a Pennsylvania bred and sired horse, if you run first through third, you get 50% bonus on maiden races and 40% for all other races in Pennsylvania. If you just got yourself a PA bred, sired elsewhere, the bonuses are 25% for maiden races and 20% for all others in the state.
All right. Well, this week, we're going to talk a little bit about optimism. For the last 3 years, the Paulick Report has run a poll that says, are you, as you enter the new year, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future health of the thoroughbred industry? And it's amazing. This year, 54% of the people who have responded to the poll, and earlier this week I looked, it was over 1,000 people. 54% said they're more optimistic. Now, this is in contrast to a year ago when only 30% said they were optimistic, and 2 years ago, 43% said they were optimistic. What the heck is going on here, Joe?
I don't know. Have these people seen horse racing? Have they just? I don't see where this optimism is coming from, except for the fact that 2019 was such a bad year. Maybe coming into 2021 from 2020 is better in compare. I don't know. Help me understand, Ray. Help me understand.
Well, look, 2019 was a very difficult year. So a year ago, we had just come out of the year that Santa Anita experienced with the scrutiny of the animal activists and everything against the horse deaths. We had the incident in the Breeders' Cup where we had a fatality in the Classic. Maybe people just weren't feeling it. And then 2020 was, in terms of society, was a horrendous year. And by the way, I looked at polls that asked the general public, are we on the right track or the wrong track in this country as a whole? And something like 25% right track, 75% wrong track. So I hate to say it, but I think the Paulick Report readers are maybe the most optimistic, upbeat people walking the face of the earth. Do you think so?
I'd have lost $5 on that bet, but hey, good for you guys. I'm happy that someone is happy out there.
Well, I think there's really reasons for this. Number one, we do see light at the end of the tunnel with the pandemic, with the vaccines, and in conjunction with that, racing got through this. Unlike a lot of other sports and industries, racing was kind of set up for a stay-at-home audience with ADW in almost all states, Texas and New Mexico being a couple of big examples. But I really think that racing proved that it could operate in this sort of new crazy, no fans in the stadium type of situation.
And looking at it from a technological standpoint, on the bloodstock side, most of the auctions have been exclusively held in person. Maybe you can get somebody to bid over the phone for you, but all of a sudden, practically on the fly, these companies are getting online bidding going. They're making more videos. They're making things easier to purchase, buy, sell horses. Personally, in terms of looking forward to optimism, I'm a little skeptical if this is going to be the number one reason. I mean, you look at, and this is where all the stick to racing goons are going to get in my replies and my DMs, but the vaccine rollout has been so slow so far that I'm curious to see how much of a real effect that having something on the horizon like that is going to have on racing in 2021. Like, is there going to be enough general immunity out there to have full open public for the Triple Crown races? Is there going to be enough for the Breeders' Cup this year? I don't know. I don't think anybody has the answer yet. I'm willing to wait and see.
Well, we got through last year thanks in great part to TVG, which has been bringing us races for a long time, but we never depended on TVG as much as we did last year. The Fox shows that were produced by Naira were outstanding. Racing has had some really good television coverage, so I'm really, really happy about that. I think another reason for optimism, and we did another poll just before this asking if people think that the formation of the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority through federal legislation would have a net positive or negative, and 3 out of 4 people said positive. So I believe that people are looking at the creation of this Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority as a positive, because for the first time we will have national standards for medication, rules, regulations, and for safety standards. So I don't know how you could feel anything positive about this, at least from my perspective.
Well, that's what I'm here for. And I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate for you here. I think I agree with you in general. I think it's going to shake out to be a positive thing, but I think there are still some questions to be answered with HISA, and definitely some things that are going to need to be ironed out between all the various horse racing and government entities. There's still some questions as to who's going to actually pay for everything. I think we're still in the discovery process for this whole thing, and it's not going to be an easy ride. I think the destination is going to be worthwhile in the end, but we've still got a lot to learn.
All right, some negatives. There is some reason for pessimism. Number one, I think the FBI dropped a bomb last March, and we haven't really heard much since then. They blame the pandemic for not convening grand juries and further indictments. We don't know where this is heading. We don't know if there will be no one else indicted, whether or not there's going to be double the number that were previously indicted. I just have a feeling that this is not over. And I don't know, I don't know where it's heading, but I don't see it as anything to feel really good about, other than the fact that we might cleanse the industry of some bad apples.
Yeah, and don't worry, I'm not going to go against you on this one. I'm with you 100% on this. Ever since the indictments initially came down on a group of people, including trainers Jorge Navarro and Jason Service, horse racing has been looking over its shoulder, waiting for the next shoe to drop. And you'd have to imagine eventually it's going to, and you don't know who the names are going to be. It could be someone insignificant, or it could be someone, that could potentially shatter the very foundation of the sport. But, until we know, we'll just keep looking over our shoulder.
Well, there's another area that I'm kind of pessimistic about this, but I think some people are optimistic, so I'm not really sure what to make of it. And that's sports betting. It started in New Jersey. It's now legal in a number of states. There's more states coming on board. California's talking about it. Kentucky's talking about it. Florida's talking about it. Is this a good or bad thing for horse racing? I see it as more competition, and I don't look at competition as a really good thing.
Well, I could go into a very long-winded story about how the Michigan lottery helps sink horse racing in the state, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to tell you that competition is always very tough unless you find a way to work it in and find a way to commingle with each other. I'm not convinced I've seen that with horse racing and sports betting, aside from let us host sports betting at a horse racing venue, which doesn't necessarily translate to direct dollars into handle. Until there's something that can prove to me that that's going to happen, it's a nice thing to draw people in, and maybe they buy some extra hot dogs, but is it turning into real dollars for horse racing? That's still to be proven.
Yeah. Well, there's another area that I'm concerned about, and that's ownership. The dynamics of horse ownership have changed completely to where it used to be one person owned 20 horses. Now you have 20 people own one horse, or maybe in the case of my racehorse, 3,000 people owning one horse. You could make that into a positive, I guess, because maybe they're bringing more people into the game, but we need people to own horses. Otherwise it will hurt the breeding industry if you don't have anybody to buy the horses, and it hurts the fact that we need horses at the entry box, and we need owners to have those horses.
I think it all depends on the type of owner that we're discussing when we're talking about the consolidation of ownership. When you're talking about a group like My Racehorse, I look at my Facebook timeline and there are people who are big racing fans that are suddenly much more invested in the sport because they have, that little hair on the tail of a big horse that they're following. And it's something that they wouldn't normally have. It's not something they would normally share. Where I'm concerned about is at the very high levels when people who would normally be slugging it out for 7-figure horses are suddenly, teaming together to go on the same horse instead of, dispersing their assets and trying to buy 5, $250,000 horses. They're putting their money into $1 million horse. That is going to be concerning on the bloodstock side. And then once those horses get to the racetrack, that's fewer horses to go around once you get on the track.
Yeah, and the days of people like Prince Khalid of Saudi Arabia, who bred to race, who supported the Breeders' Cup like nobody else. We need more people like that. Unfortunately, I don't know where you're going to find them. I don't know if you're going to find anyone like that one again.
I don't know, but you know what? On this website, we get accused of being too pessimistic too often. So I don't want to end on a negative note on this. Let's end with one more note of optimism here. Okay. Looking back at 2020, one of the big things that happened was we were all stuck inside. We couldn't go to our live tracks. We couldn't go to the simulcast. We had to play advanced deposit wagering. And this led to a lot of smaller to mid-level tracks getting a level of exposure that they'd never seen before. You look at the early days when like Fauner Park and Will Rogers Downs were getting millions of dollars poured into their pools that they would have never seen before. Going into the summer, places like Indiana Grand had record handle regularly. Once things get back to normal, I don't suddenly imagine that the handicappers are going to be piling their money into the Dinsdale Pick 5 at Fauner Park at the same, enthusiasm that they did before. But some of them might stick around. And as a base level, this could be a rising tide situation. And I'm glad to see that. As a small track guy, it warms my heart.
Well, that's true. And these tracks are increasingly looking for their own spots to operate. The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday tracks have done pretty well because they found a niche for themselves. And that was happening before the pandemic, but I think it happened even more during the pandemic. So that's some good news. All right, let's go to the star of the week.
Creed is up on the outside to take the lead. Ride Comet tries to run at him. Ride Comet and Casa Creed, these two. Ride Comet getting up. Ride Comet wins the Tropical Turf.
All right, Ride Comet was off 2 years. He came back, and that was his third consecutive win. Now, 2 years ago, he won the Grade 2 Del Mar Derby on turf. He came back. He won on synthetic up at Woodbine, and he won the Tropical Turf on the turf. An amazing comeback story. A horse that bowed a tendon, was getting ready to come back to the races for Mark Casse, and he bowed the same tendon again. And, this horse has come back remarkably strong from having a bowed tendon 2 times.
Absolutely. From any experience that I've had with a horse owner having a horse bow a tendon, that's it for them. Usually whether it's a stakes level horse or a claiming level horse, they might come back, but they never run at the same level. So to see the way that it's advanced, especially with a horse like Ride Comet, where he can come back and be a graded stakes level horse, a graded stakes winner, awesome story. Love it.
Yeah. Mark Casse, first of all, he credits the owners of the horse, John Oxley and My Meadowview farm, for keeping the horse in train, for giving him the time to do it. But, I said, did you do surgery? There's all kinds of new surgeries you can do for bowed tendons. He said, no, we didn't do that. He said, no stall rest. The horse was in a paddock. He said, in fact, it was right behind my house. During the pandemic, we built a baseball field for my son in our backyard. And he said that horse stood right by the fence, and he watched baseball for months while he was recuperating from this bowed tendon. They'd hit foul balls into the field, and he wouldn't pay attention to that. But he said lots of swimming, lots of exercise. He did use shockwave therapy on the horse, which has kind of a bad reputation at the racetrack because it can be abused. But for a therapeutic, when a horse is on a layup, shockwave therapy can be very useful. And he said bringing a horse back onto a synthetic track was a key. He thinks it's better for both. So, this is a remarkable story for a horse to be gone that long, to come back and win, graded stakes level. He's actually got quite a pedigree and might deserve to be a stallion someday.
Yeah, a comeback like this has had significant stallion ramifications. I mean, he was a graded stakes winner before he got hurt, so he was going to stand somewhere regardless. But the fact that he's been able to sustain that form, ride a Comet, a son of Candy Ride, who's obviously white hot as a sire, and getting his sons to stud, out of Grade 1 winner Appealing Zophie, this makes him a half brother to 2017 Belmont Stakes winner Caprit, himself at stud at Gainesway.
Well, that's our star of the week. We'll see you next week on the Friday show. Be sure to go to the PHBA.com, bid on those stallion seasons. The auction runs through next Monday. We'll see you then.